Welcome back. You're here with Dr. Goldberg. Today we're going to be talking about nationalism. Nationalism is for losers, brah. Nationalism's bad. You gotta be an individual. And I don't have a lot of skin in this game. I consider the economic struggle to be a lot more profound. But I'm also sick and tired of these low aptitude, low IQ arguments that go unchallenged against nationalism in our self-improvement meme culture. There are two primary types. There's the person who advances individualism, but in bad faith. They're just trying to hide the fact that they know they probably wouldn't be welcome in a nationalist system. It's kind of like that guy from Rebel Media lecturing white people on why you can't be nationalists, and I'm thinking, what's your motivation in that? Or it's the perpetual self-improver that never gets anywhere but thinks he's superior to someone who loves a collective idea or identity. And so we'll just delve in. I'm going to start with a quote from Beware of Doug Stanhope, who was a comedian, and he goes, "Nationalism does nothing but teach you to hate people you never met." You're right, Doug Stanhope. Mussolini was an Italian nationalist, and he was full of hatred for everyone. So he wanted to invade Ethiopia because he hated them and he didn't know them. And also because in 1923, Haile Selassie, the king of Ethiopia, who for some reason Rastafarians consider him like a reincarnation of Jesus, he agreed to the League of Nations that he was going to eradicate slavery. He made that commitment. 13 some years later, slavery is still flourishing in Ethiopia, probably because he was profiting off of it. And the Italians, who were in Italian Somaliland, where there are a lot of Somalians, and the Ethiopians know the Somalians because they're close to them. Because they know them, and they don't hate them, they would go over the border, capture Somalians, and make them slaves. And the Italians said, cut that out, so they invaded. One of the first things this nationalist fascist regime did is it eradicated slavery, because it hated the people so much who were brown. And that was wrong, because you violated their free market democracy and the cheap labor. Exactly. So you see how nationalism is destructive to other people. Second part of the quote goes, "And to take pride in accomplishments you had no part in." Exactly. You're a loser if you are proud of a nation, an empire, technological achievements, artwork, whatever it might be, because you didn't have any part in it. And so if we just click over here, this is Beware of Doug Stanhope, and he's wearing what I think is a Green Bay Fudge Packers jersey, which he was not a QB or a quarterback or even a cheerleader, but he's proud of a team. Why are you proud of a team if you didn't have any part in it? I guess it's different when it comes to football because it's not the same. It's not controversial. It's just football. Okay, cool. And we have this quote from Sidney J. Harris. "The difference between patriotism and nationalism is the patriot is proud of his country for what it does, and the nationalist is proud of his country no matter what it does. The first has a feeling of responsibility, the second, blind arrogance that leads to war." So George W. Bush was a patriotic American. He was not a nationalist. Remember, "I will never relent in defending America, whatever it takes." And he led us into Iraq, which spent trillions of dollars. We lost thousands of Americans, many Iraqis as well. For what purpose? Was that patriotism? Was that nationalism? See, patriotism is the blindness. Patriotism is waving a flag when you have a corrupt government that doesn't even care about its people and saying, "I'm still proud of it because I belong to this general part of the world." That's patriotism for you, and it's very destructive. Now things get a little bit more interesting here.
So the nationalism versus patriotism bit gets to some of the aspects of tribalism that we've talked about, because there is, I think it's fair to say, good tribalism is in the tribalism of ideas.
Tribalism.
Then there is bad tribalism as in the tribalism of race or the tribalism of class, things that you can't change about yourself that you are born into. This would be bad tribalism. And tribalism of ideas, where you are part of a group because you identify as part of this group, this would be a tribalism that is less likely to be a problem. Recently, I read systems and histories that play into the creation of the tribe. It's simply kind of intellectualized tribalism to, well, I agree with you on this list of propositions, therefore we are not part of the same tribe. Ignores the fact that people have a natural inclination to identify with people who have a similar history, a similar culture, a similar language.
So the ideas-based nationalism is okay. So like Stalinism was largely political. It wasn't racist on the same level. So that's acceptable because it's less racial than something else. So is his yarmulke and his, the group that he belongs to and the right of return, all that stuff, that's not based upon the group you were born into, being proud of them. No, it's just based upon ideas. They're just ideas. Oh, okay, so I guess anyone could be part of Israel. No, not really. Israel has very strict citizenship policies.
What do you make of that argument? Is there any way to bridge that particular gap?
So my standard analogy about all this is that every poison is determined by the dose, right? And so ethics of national unity, to me, is much more problematic.
Of course it's problematic.
When
he doesn't want a strong government that can resist foreign interests, whether that be Care Bear Land, China, Russia being mainly through Democrats, if you look historically. He wants a weak, subverted bazaar, essentially, just a market.
Say that the highest ideal is not patriotism, which is basically a creedal idea, right? There's a certain set of propositions that we agree on.
No,
but it's instead
America's
this
not
sort of
united.
far more
There's no common idea right now.
Ryan and Rich and Neuromark probably, I would think, it's very difficult to define, particularly in a multi-ethnic society.
There it is.
Where there isn't an enormous amount of consensus.
Multi-ethnic society. It reminds me of this guy from Turning Point USA. I think his name is Kirk, and he's always going on about how Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East that respects all the different faiths. That's a lie. Lebanon's a democracy, multi-confessional. I don't know if they have Jews in the government, but do they have to be legitimate? And Lebanon, as far as I know, doesn't have like a right of return law or a nation-state law that's specifically about making it an ethnically exclusive country.
It's around customs. And it turns out that the consensus is around the creedal stuff, not the weird cultural stuff.
No, it's not.
And so manufacturing this sort of this concept of nationalism, I think, very quickly becomes exclusionary to a lot of people.
Like you.
Seen as exclusionary by a lot of people.
Yep.
But what concerns me more is getting back to that has any claim of speaking for the whole nation.
Talk about the federal government.
And so almost invariably, when political parties who have control of government take up the mantle of nationalism, it becomes either socialism or some other form of statism.
Oh, it's socialism. I should really do a book like Socialism of the Right, because I'm so sick of people bastardizing the term in the United States. They don't even know what it means. Socialism, if you just look at the word, socialism could just be like socialism, I'm social. It could be socialism of people, it could be socialism of industry, it could be socialism of art. I mean, there's a lot of different concepts, and it's been essentially dumbed down to nothing. Let's hurry up a little bit here.
White nationalism is bad, okay? The left and I agree.
Of course
we
you agree with the left.
Nationalism is bad. Nationalism is bad because it's stupid and wrong to make moral judgments about people according to their race rather than their actions.
Stupid to make
moral judgments.
Just shut up for a minute. You got a great voice, by the way. Why do you assume it's always this caricature? Why can't nationalism be about love? Why can't nationalism be about preserving heritage? Why does it always have to be, some moron like Chris Cantwell? Because he doesn't really have an intelligent argument. He's not obviously anti-Israel. He doesn't have a comprehensive argument against it, so he has to rely on this silliness. I have to speed up here a little bit.
It comes from the same country as, you can't say, white people held slaves, and therefore you're responsible because you have the same color as those white people. And it wasn't white people holding slaves, it was some white people holding slaves, while other white people, of course, were fighting to free them. You can't say black people commit crimes, black people
yes,
are
you
muggers.
Can. Not all black people, obviously. Well, yeah, okay, Scots-Irish come over here, they're indentured servants, they're treated horribly, they don't have the means or desire to buy property and own other people. I even can't conceive of owning another person's property. I mean, I'd love to own that booty. That's a little bit different. We're talking about different times. But if they're not responsible for slavery, and black people, like the descendants of black people, are not, obviously, they weren't brought here themselves, why are they all forced to live together under this American model? Why are you insistent on that? If black people said they wanted to start their own country, who are we to say, you're not allowed to do that, you have to remain Americans? Strikes me like you're the one who's authoritarian and oppressive right here, Mr. Klavan.
Okay, so if Jews aren't getting any jobs at a certain bank because they're not hiring Jews, that they are violating.
Really? Does that ever happen?
and the person who's getting the reparations didn't suffer anything. I'm against Indian reservations. How about that one? I think they should be phased out. Why should they not just be full Americans at this point? It's just...
Well, the reservations and the agreements were obviously poorly handled. I mean, it's tragic. In Canada, all the girls have been raped and disappeared for the First Nations. But the idea of the reservation, Clavan, is that essentially you preserve these linguistic groups, these traditions, these customs. As we're seeing, that's the consequence of when you say, well, whatever, and some of it's because of war, disease, whatnot. A lot of Native American civilizations have just been completely wiped out. We have no long-term records of them. We don't have a population of any substance that is still in kind of compact. So, yeah, you can't really appreciate this because you have to sell this boomer conservative, everyone's American stuff. And now we're going to have a breath of fresh air.
People imagine that without nationalism, we would all be living in some kind of liberal paradise. But much more likely, without nationalism, we would be living in tribal chaos. Because the big project of nationalism is to make a lot of strangers care about one another and be able to cooperate.
Exactly. Why can't it just be about love and betterment? Italo Balbo, the transatlantic crossing, building the roads and expanding education in Libya, the development of the radio. There's other examples in various nations we can think of. Why does it always have to be this idea of hatred, that's all of these, kosher American conservatives can come up with? And it's because they don't really have any beliefs themselves. So they have to revert back to this simplicity. And quickly here, if I can find it.
99.99% of the other Israelis. I don't know them personally. I never met most of them. I'm unlikely to ever meet them. But nationalism makes it possible for me to care about these millions of strangers and to cooperate with them. And this has been one of the greatest advances in human history. And also, I don't think, one of the other problems that often people cite with nationalism is that nationalism is a barrier for cooperation on the international level. The president of...
Exactly. You can, it can cause you as an individual to think of, let me do something for my community, for my country. Let me serve the poor. Let me serve in the military. Let me develop some kind of medical research that can save lives. Nationalism does not have to be about this one-dimensional hatred. And they're only doing that because they're wrapped up in World War II and the fact that this is the only way nationalism can turn out. Nationalism can be about, look, most nationalists I know, they are very interested in other cultures. They're very respectful, but they say, we want our own culture and we're also going to respect you. We'll trade with you, talk with you, exchange, cultural ideas, celebrations, but we don't all need to live in the same area and become one sort of monocultural economic unit. Frankly, when people talk about individualism as something better, I think individualism is just this sort of ultimately the extreme version, what a lot of people take from Jordan Peterson, not saying that he advocates that, but his followers, it becomes this kind of self-interested, selfish mentality that everything's about me. You're less likely to care about another person if you don't feel like you have anything in common with them. You're just going to be like, well, as long as I make money and live my life, who cares? So that's the thing. Nationalism can actually make you a better national citizen, a participant in a community, and a global citizen. Individualism can cause you to just say, I don't care, I'm just going to serve myself. I don't care about pollution, I don't care about anything, I don't care about progeny. I am just focused on here and the now. And that's something that personally I don't really agree with. So let me know your thoughts on nationalism in the comments section.